Yeah, so anchors were worshipped by ancient peoples, and they put faces on them. Now, where Noah's Ark has landed, up in Armenia, near Turkey, the mountains of Ararat, where Noah's Ark is said to have landed, they have a lot of large stone anchors. The only large ones on par with those of Florida that I have ever seen in the world are on the top of Mount Ararat. Sorry, the mountains of Ararat.
Yeah, in Turkey or something.
Where Noah's Ark is said to have landed.
Whoa.
Now,
Noah's Ark landed there?
yes, and I think it took off from Florida, believe it or not.
Whoa.
Yes, so if we interpret those stories literally, Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor was E. Calloway. He did not win, but he ran honorably and lost, but he was a very knowledgeable, well-accredited guy before that. He was a lawyer and judge. He was friends with many presidents, very respected guy. He developed a theory shortly after that Florida was the original Garden of Eden. And
he developed that theory.
He arrived at that theory by...
when he had time after he lost the
Yeah, a lot of time on his hands.
I know you're getting at it. I didn't know all these details of this story.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So he got sent on a kind of mission from God after a religious experience, and he was introduced to a mystic author by the name of Dr. Brown Landone, who sent him off on this kind of crazy quest. Didn't send him on that mission, just told him he had a great calling ahead of him. And not to be vague, I'm being vague, but there's more details that you can read up about it.
In the book, right? Iron Republic. He wrote a book on
it. He wrote In the Beginning.
In the Beginning.
Yeah.
Someone else wrote Iron Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So, In the Beginning.
You own a bookstore. You need to know these things. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. In the Beginning, he wrote. Cool.
1966. He wrote that.
Cool.
And pretty much proves that if there is a literal Garden of Eden, you don't have to interpret those stories literally. But if we are interpreting them literally, they can only have been in one place that is still known to man. Now, when a lot of those stories were getting written down, the Bible and such, they were not aware of the Western continents. They were not aware of the Americas, to what we're told. How could they then have incorporated the Americas in their search for places like that, those early places, those legends, like Eden, the Garden of Eden? They couldn't have found them in a place if they were limited to a different place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
Not to mention the fact that according to every person who's ever written a book 6,000 years ago, all the ancient traditions, all the ancient legends, that Noah, or his equivalent, depending on what tradition you're choosing, landed in Eurasia, but nowhere does it say he departed from Eurasia. In fact, if you're spending 150 days in a boat on the open waters, potentially up to 300 days, it only rained for 40 days and 40 nights. But he was in the boat for about 150, at least.
About how long it takes to get to the other side of the world.
Exactly. That's about very, very equatable to a transatlantic voyage.
What a trip.
Not to mention there's a current of water, very strong current, most ancient current of water known to man, the sacred Gulf Stream, which originates in the Gulf of Mexico, sends warm water to all these places you would never even have heard of. There'd still be ice cubes in the Ice Age if it weren't for the Gulf Stream.
That's right.
So,
do you think it's a divine thing?
Yes, and it comes from Florida, and it is one signature that Florida is a special place. Another special
It's right
place,
out here. Dude, it's close. It gets as close as it gets to Jupiter.
That's why
to America, right? I think.
That's why Palm Beach is so rich. It's one of the closest places where the Gulf Stream comes to land. It's a symbol of ancient seafaring dominance.
Because it's rich waters.
And it snakes in between the Bahamas and Florida, right here, between the Palm Beaches. And that's why Trump lives here. That's why many of the world's richest. And what do the richest people in the world fly around on?
Jets.
What are they called?
Private jets.
What are they called? Gulfstream jets.
That's exactly
my GS6.
They're called Gulfstream. Dude, what a trip.
like 90% of the world's population, much of it, definitely 3/4 for sure. The majority of the world's population centers around the 31st to 30th parallel of the world.
Really?
That Garden of Eden, up near where E. Calloway was looking around, it's 31 degrees parallel. It's on the same exact parallel as the fake Garden of Eden that they show us in the Middle East, which only has 2 rivers, one of which barely, flows.
You're saying the Tigris and the Euphrates or whatever?
Those names were transplanted to Eurasia after the flood.
Really?
But those names originate in Florida. Florida on the border of Florida and Georgia on 31st degree parallel. The most interesting, mysterious parallel longitudinal line that the Earth has crosses through the world's only 4-headed river system. The world's only 4-headed river system, just like this, just like my hand.
In the Bible,
Equal 4 rivers.
they talk about this.
Goes up and it's feeds into the Apalachicola River. It's the Apple of Eden, the Apalachicola. And that's an ancient Indian word. And these 4 rivers go into one river. They expel into the Atlantic Ocean.
Atlantic Ocean.
Sorry, they expel into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's right. They're on the
But
other
then,
side.
ultimately, yeah.
What a trip. So you're saying those rivers they're talking about in the Bible were over here.
Any Christian,
Are here.
any Muslim, any Abrahamic adherent of any Abrahamic faith, I challenge to read the Bible, Genesis, whatever your equivalent holy book is, the earliest account of the Garden of Eden. Locate a place on earth that matches all the literal criteria. Florida is the only place that can do that, especially when you trace back the history of how the lands were lost via the flood. A place left one land, came to another. Then they named, New England. When people land somewhere, they use the first names they came with.
Yes.
England, New France,
New Mexico.
New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's all, people are not that original. So they landed in Eurasia and renamed 2 of these rivers. There's not 4. There never has been. Okay? Now, they cannot find a 4-headed river system in the Middle East. It's barren. It always has been. The only times it's ever been fertile is when it took vast amounts of labor to irrigate those lands in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, to render them relatively hospitable to agriculture is such a labor-intensive process. It took thousands of slaves, thousands of years. Those places have been salted, yes. People would say that, they were lush and now they're this. I don't think God would treat the Garden of Eden that way. I think the Garden of Eden would have a series of protections. Well, the Apalachicola area is an Ice Age refuge. It's one of the world's most biodiverse areas on Earth.
Yeah.
Biodiversity hotspot, Ice Age refuge, meaning
everything grows here.
We're in the garden. It's existential.